Welcome to the DeSo NFT Museum. As you can see, we have collections from Natter and Mubs and Paul. Let's take a look at Paul's collection of NFTs. Paul's NFT collection includes artists such as Sarvent, or Sarvente, Dopeheads, Octoposse. Let's go over and take a look at Natter's. Natter has NFTs from Dr. Rob and Diego Robot. So where is this NFT museum, you ask? Well, I'll have the link below in the show notes, but maybe an even better question is, how can you make your own DeSo NFT Museum? And that's what we're going to talk about today. So first of all, you may be asking, are we going to create the whole code to create this museum? No, we're going to use a tool called gather.town. It's actually kind of a Zoom competitor. It's meant to be able to bring people together to talk, to have conferences, to have conference calls, that kind of thing. But within this visual conferencing tool, they have the ability to embed URLs. And so when I saw that, I thought, I think we can hack this. So to start out, the whole layout, I was able to create with the Gather tool. So the museum, the walls and the plants and the benches and all that, that's all built in. And there's plenty of tutorials on how to do that. So we won't really cover that. But what I will cover is when you add any kind of object to Gather, you have the ability to embed a URL in there. And so I chose to use things that look like artwork, right? It's like these paintings and statues, because it kind of made sense to do it that way. And what you do is when it highlights yellow, you press the X key and it opens up a URL that you embed in there. So in this case, it points to a web app that I've created in Replit. And that's what we're going to go over today. As you can see here, I was able to pass it a parameter for Salil Sethi, and it grabs the first 40 NFTs that he has and displays them in this carousel object. That sound like fun? Let's go ahead and get started. And let's build DeSo. So first of all, let's give an overview of what we'll be doing today. So we're going to be creating a web app that displays a person's NFTs in a carousel type component. And we'll be doing this within Replit. And within that web app, we want the ability to pass in a querystring variable that will determine whose NFTs we will be displaying. And then we'll show how to embed that URL within GatherTown. And what I hope that we can learn is we'll introduce a little bit more of the new DeSo.js library, and at the same time review DeSo's NFT functionality, might learn a little bit more about React, and we'll continue to explore the possibilities of GatherTown. So let's start coding. Okay. So I have some boilerplate code that we can start with, because we don't want to have to build the whole React carousel and all those modules from scratch. And we really just want to focus on the DeSo portion of this. So below I'll have a link to this base code, or this boilerplate code. And you can fork that code and then code along with me. So when you go to this URL that's below, you'll see something a little different, but there'll be a little icon that you can click to fork my code. The way I do it is I'm going to click here and there and hit fork. And at this point, we'll be doing the same thing. I'm going to say NFT viewer walkthru. You can call it whatever you want. And I will hit confirm. Now, we should be all running the same code now. So if you hit run, it'll go through, and it may take a little bit longer for you to come up, but we'll get a basic functionality that we'll look at. So we see that there's an actual URL, And it's displaying, if I click on there, we see that it's displaying 2 of my NFTs. But if we click over here on NFT Viewer Carousel, we'll see that it's not really going to DeSo right now to get that information. It is just using some static data that I put in there. And that's how I generally like to code with React, is before I try to connect to a data source, I like to have just some static data that's going to be structured the same way as the data that's coming in through the API call or however I'm getting it. So this allows me to kind of debug the pure kind of front end code and make sure that's working fine before I start trying to talk to a back end and get that working. So let's see what I'm doing here. If you're familiar with React, you'll understand use state. I'll go over it really quickly for those who are a little fuzzy on this. Because there's no state really in a web page, React does some stuff behind the scenes to help us out. It allows us to create, we'll just call them variables that can retain their state from refresh to refresh as it's redrawing the screen. But they're a little bit different than variables we usually think of. This will be my getter variable. So whenever I just need to get the data from it, I'll use this. And in this case, it's called items. And whenever I need to modify or add to that data, then I have my setter here. And so I'm going to have 2 use state variables. One will hold all the items, the URL of that NFT, and then the creator of that NFT. And the second one I'll have here is owner name. So this is the person who currently owns that NFT collection. So this will end up being an array of arrays. And in this case, I have the URL first for this image, and then the second part of this array is the artist name. And then here I'll have the, if I click on that, that's the URL for this image and the creator of this NFT. And so how do I display this? We have this carousel component, which I didn't create. I just used someone else's and fitted it for our needs. But you'll see here, this is my items, and I'm going to loop through each member of this array. And each time I do, I'm going to go down here and I'm going to display the picture. And you might be wondering, why don't I just use an image tag with the source? Well, because a lot of these images are stored as WebP files, and those don't play really nicely with the image tag. So we need to use this HTML picture tag, which we first list the source. We tell the source set, which is this URL with the extension WebP. And so if it is a WebP, it'll display it here. And then this is the fallback. If it's something else like a JPEG, it'll just use regular image tag. So that's what this is. And you can see I'm just getting the first 0 position of this array, which again is this URL. And our position 1, or the second item in that array, would be right here, artist, and that's what we're getting right here, artist, and I'm putting the @ sign here and then the artist name. So that's all we're doing. Now when we reach out to the DeSo API and we get information back, we're going to get a lot more information than this, but that's fine. We'll go ahead and just pull out the 2 things that we need and repackage it, do set items on that, and get it to display. Okay, so you can see here, in the beginning, I set the owner name to Kenny J, that's me, and then I set these items which our code can use. Okay, so the first thing we're going to want to do is create a function. I've already kind of telegraphed to you what we're going to name it. So we'll go ahead and create a function. We'll use our arrow syntax to do that. Const get NFTs equals the parameter list, arrow. Okay. And what are we going to do within here? Let's do a couple to-dos. Let's first get the username from querystring. And then next, we will get the NFTs for that user. Next, we'll iterate through the list and create our own. So first of all, get the username. So just so we can get a little bit more practice using the DeSo library, we're going to have the public key be in the query string, and then we'll use that public key to find out what the username is. And let's go ahead and we will open this in a new tab. You can't put, within Replit, you can't put query string information in here. But if we pop this out into a new window, then I can. And I can do something like public key equals, and we'll just, for one, right now, we'll just say 1, 2, 3, 4. And if we hit return, it won't affect anything. It still should work just fine. But we'll do a little defensive programming just in case we don't have that public key in there. So let's go ahead first and we'll create a constant called default public key. And we'll set it equal to, I'll move this over. Okay, so this is the public key of a friend of mine from DeSo. Actually, he's an IRL friend too. Now we'll go ahead and get whatever is in that query string, whether we have something or not. So we'll call this query params. We'll get everything that's in there. We'll do a new URL search params. That should be a built-in function. And we'll do window dot location dot search. And so this will be all of our query parameters. And then if we want to get just our query parameter, we can do const public key. So this is what we will be using in our code for the public key. And we would say query params. So that's this guy right there. Dot get, and we'll do public key. Okay. So far so good. We would pull this public key, the value for this key, out of the query parameter. But again, what happens if there's nothing? All right, we'll do our poor man's if-then statement. If you haven't seen this before, if this is truthy, if there's a value there, it goes ahead and just uses that and ignores anything else. But if not, then it'll go here and use this. So you can read this as, if this is not null, use it. Otherwise, use that. So there we go. Okay, so just as a sanity check, we'll do a little console log right here, and we'll console log public key. Let's like to put a little bit of information in there to help me out. Okay, so let's go over here. Let's do right click inspect, and we'll go to console. We'll clear this. We'll refresh. And there's nothing. Why is there nothing? Oh yeah, we're not calling this yet. So let's go ahead and do that. Let's refresh. There we go. Public key 1, 2, 3, 4. And if I added a 6, 7 and hit enter, and there we go, 2, 3, 4, 5. No 5. And let's do what happens if we have no public key. Well, it's going to use that default one. Good. We're good. So far, so good. We'll go ahead and delete this. Now let's go ahead and with that public key, let's get the user name. Now we're going to need to use the DeSo library. So how do we do that? Well, within Replit, so normally if you're working in VS Code or something like that, you could do npm install the DeSo package. And you could do it here in Replit that way too, but they have a cool little way where you click on package and you search for DeSo, and here's the key, because you're going to get a whole bunch. You'll do dash protocol. And when you do that, you see this one, the first one. So you hit the plus button and it will install it for you. And when it successfully installs, you'll get a little green message saying that it's successfully installed. And you can, if you want to get rid of it, click on the X. You might want to be careful. Every once in a while, I'll click on the X to just delete the message, or I think I do, and I accidentally click on the remove package, and then I have to do it again. So there we go. All right. Now, what does that do for us? Well, now we can go over here and import DeSo from DeSo protocol. So this is, here we are importing the library. And let's go ahead and down here, we will create a DeSo object. So we'll do DeSo equals new capital D ESO, because this needs to match this. This is the class that we're instantiating. So, and just, you know, just to make it cleaner, I like instantiating my stuff up there. Okay, there we go. So we're going to create that first now, run through this. Now, how do we use this? All right, first we're going to use get user stateless in order to get the person's name. So we could do DeSo, and it's within the user namespace, and it's get user stateless. And that's the basic, but we need to fill it in with some stuff. So first of all, it's going to expect a parameter, which is, we'll just call it user request. So I'm going to say, or request user. And it'll be a JSON. And this will be the data that we're posting to the API, so it knows what we want and it can return that. So in here, we actually only need one key value pair. And we're going to use public keys base 58 check. And it is going to expect an array. But we only really have one thing to put in there, but that's fine. But we need to put it in there as an array. And whoops, this isn't going to work up here. Let me move it down there. Okay, there we go. I'm sure a few of you caught that, but because we are going to need to use this public key, and that's what we'll do. We'll just pop that in there. Okay, and then we can pop that in there. We're almost there. We need a variable now, or constant, I guess, in JavaScript, to catch the response object. And so we'll just call this one const response user equals. And this is an asynchronous call. So we're going to use await. And of course, if we're going to use the await keyword, then this needs to become an asynchronous function. So we go up here and we just add async. Okay, let's see how we do. Let's go ahead and we'll do another console log. we'll just log out this whole user. We'll go back up here. Let me clear this. We're not going to, let's not put in the public key yet. We'll just use that default one. So I'm going to hit return, and there we go. User list. Remember, it took an array. It should only have one back, but let's take a look. User list, the 0 indexed value, lots and lots and lots of information. Very good. Let's look for what we want. We want profile entry response. And if we go down there, we are looking for username. So there we go. Swiffy PhD. That's the username that corresponds to this public key. So how do we get all the way down there? Well, I'm just going to paste it in for you. You can traverse that whole tree yourself if you want to. Make sure I'm not pulling a fast one. So we have this user response. We're going to look at user list. We're going to take the 0 position, profile entry response, user name. Let's do this one more time. Clear, hit enter, and there we go. It comes out with my buddy. Okay, great. What do we want to do with that again? Oh yeah, we want to do set owner name. So I'm just going to copy, paste that there, but instead of Kenny J, I'll cut that out and put that there. And I'll get rid of my console log. And now look, Kenny J turned to Swiffy PhD. Great. Now let's make sure that this works with someone else when we give it an actual public key. Okay, let's go over here and let's try with someone's real key. Let's do Alex Villedas's. Public key equals. All right, there we go. Alex Villedas is now set as owner. Okay, so far so good. Next, we want to get the NFTs for this actual user. So we'll do something similar here in order to get the NFT. So we'll start with our DeSo object, and instead of this username space, we'll use NFT, and instead of get user stateless, we will use get NFTs for user. And of course, we'll pass in a request object there. So let's go ahead and do that, create that. We'll call this one request NFTs equals, and it's going to be pretty similar to this one. I'll go ahead and copy and paste it in there, but we're going to change a few things. First of all, it says keys, remember, because in this one, it allowed you to, well, it expects an array. Here, it's just singular, so we're going to remove our little brackets there. But in addition, it's, in this case, it's called user public key base 58 check. So we'll go ahead and pass that in as a parameter. Then we'll want to have a variable that, constant, that will be able to catch this response. And we'll call that response NFTs equals, and because it again is an async function, we'll use the await keyword. Now let's go ahead and console log this out so we can take a look at this. Okay, let's go here, let's clear this, and we'll go ahead and leave Alex's public key there and see what we get back. Okay, data, config, request. Let's look at data. We have NFT maps. All right. So here's a bunch of NFTs that are owned by Alex. And if we keep going down, we can get more information. So for each item in this map, we'll want to go down to post entry responses and image URLs. You'll see that it's actually an array but we just want to grab this first one. Okay, so we'll iterate through that list. So we'll do for, we'll create a for loop, and right now we'll just call each item X. We'll rename it to something a little better in a second. And we want to loop through is in this response NFT. So we'll do that, and then it's data and NFTs map. Okay. So what is it we're really getting? This is the NFT key. We'll call it that. That's more descriptive than X. NFT key. Great. And what are we going to do as we loop through? We want to grab the image URL and the creator's name. So the image URL, we can just say const image equals. So we want to use this NFT key to allow us to traverse down to that area. So what do we need to do? Well, it seems a little messy, but we still have to put that in there. And then we'll use the NFT key. This will allow us to get to this level. And from there, we can do our post entry response, which is right here, and then image URLs. Image URLs. Of course, this image is really a list of images, so we'll do something real quick to take care of that. But let's, at this point, get the creator's name. We'll call it artist user name. And we'll do something similar. We'll just grab this for right now. And if we go down a little further, what we want here is just profile entry response and good old username. Profile entry response username. Okay, I'm going to give us a little bit more room here. So far, for each item in this map, we should be getting an image and the artist username. So now we want to create another variable to hold this information so that it imitates this structure. So before we even start this loop, let's go ahead and create just an empty array out here. Let's just call it images. You know, I don't like this name images because it also is going to have the username. So how about we call it carousel items, and we'll spell it right. Okay. And we want to now push these values into carousel items. But we're going to have to do a little defensive programming because not all NFTs have images. So let's take care of that. So if images list, that'll make it simple. If it's empty, then the following code won't execute. We'll say carousel items push, so that's how we're going to push it onto the array. And we're going to take images you know what, we should do one more thing defensively before we do this. So maybe this exists, but maybe it's an empty array. So let's make sure that this possible array actually has something in it. So we'll make sure that the length is less than 0. And now, once we get past all of those guard posts, we'll go ahead and push our images list. But remember, we don't want all of them. We just want that first one. And we'll push in the artist username. But once again, as you remember, this is an array of arrays. So let's make this an array. There we go. Let's clean this up a little bit. And let's console log our carousel items. Make sure it looks good. And we'll get rid of this console log. I don't think we need that anymore. Okay, we got an error. I probably spelled something wrong. On-caught error, cannot read property of undefined username. So let's go back here. So, yes, I see what happened. This isn't spelled wrong, but I'm missing a level. So we need it to match. So NFT key, post entry response, NFT key, post entry response, then profile entry response, then username. Let's go over here and take a look. Yep, there we go. Awesome. And let's take a look at what we have. Great, we have exactly what we want. An image and an artist name. I'm going to move this over just a little more. There we go. We have some breathing room there. Okay, so all I need to do now is call this set items and have it overwrite what I did initially. I'm kind of initializing it there. I'll put carousel items in here and might as well comment out that console log. Okay, look, we've got different images. This one, so we have our owner. Remember the default is Swiftly PhD, and now we're seeing his NFTs. And if we go over here to Alex, now we see his. Yay, success. All right, so now we have an app, a carousel app that shows the NFTs for a given public key. With that, we can go to gather.town and embed this URL. But before we do that, let's put one more little check on here, because some people have like hundreds of NFTs, and it really kind of slows down the app from bringing everything up. And I'm sure there's things I could do. I could paginate it and stuff like that. Don't want to do that right now. Let's just limit the number that it takes to, let's say 40. I found that 40 worked just fine. So let's add right here, before we even get into this loop, I'm going to put a little counter in there. Nope, it won't be a constant. Let's make it let I equals 0. And let's do max NFTs equals, like I said, let's do 40. And once we're in here, let's go ahead and say if I is greater than max NFTs, then we'll just break out of this loop. And of course, though, we need to increment that I. So let's go down here under our push. Every time we push something on the array, let's go ahead and just set I equal to I plus 1. I know there's fancier ways to do this. I think my audience is beginner intermediate, so I just like to keep it very easy to follow. So there we go. Let's try this out. Oh, it looks like maybe I messed something up. Okay, is not defined. Oh, did I not put const? I did not. Let's try it again. There we go. It's working, and Alex, it says here, has 21 just as a sanity check. Let's reduce this to 10 and see what happens. And now we just see 1 of 11. Off by 1 error, right? That's what always happens. There we go. We'll change that. Okay, there we go. Now we're just displaying the first 10. Let's go ahead and we'll raise that back up to 40. All right, so with this in place, we are ready to take a look at how to embed this into gather.town. So one thing before we start, in order for a Replit website to be embedded, it's going to use an iframe. So in order for it to behave correctly, you actually have to tell Replit through a special query string variable called embed, very easy to remember, equals true. And then we'll put our ampersand there. So we'll hit that. It's waking my Replit up. There we go. Now that I put this there, I'll be able to use this URL with gather.town. All right, now we're in gather.town. So I'm not going to go over signing up for gather.town and creating your own space. There's tutorials on that. And once you create a space, you can add different objects to it. What I'll show you here is I'm going to add a new object, and it's going to be an embedded URL. And in this case, it'll bring in Alex's NFT collection into my little museum, but you'll be able to do the same thing. So first step, we go down here, look for the little hammer for the build tool. You bring that up. You click Open Object Picker, and it's going to take a second to load. And it'll bring up a whole bunch of objects, and it allows you to filter them down. I'm going to just search on art, and it'll show you like a little tiny circular art, sepia tone. For the fun of it, I think I'm going to add a piano. And if you go to this piano and click X, it'll bring up Alex's NFT collection. So I'll click here. And I want to move this so it's up and down. I want to put the piano right here. So I'm going to rotate it. There we go. I like it that way. And then there's a bunch of different options: no interaction, embedded website, embedded image. So if you just want a picture to pop up, you can do that. Embedded video, you can go to YouTube and then embed that video within this. Lots of really cool stuff. But we'll go ahead and click on embedded website. And then I'm going to go here and grab this URL. So I'll just copy it. Control C and Control V or paste. There we go. And remember, I have both. It's kind of hard to see it now when it's within here, but I have both the embed equals true and publicKey equal to the publicKey there. Activation distance. This is how many squares away you have to be before it lights up yellow. I just leave this to 1 because I want to be able to actually go up to a thing, and some of my objects are very close together and I don't want them both trying to light up at the same time. Then under advanced options, I like to modify this prompt message. This is where I like to put in the name of the person. So the default is press X to play or to do whatever. I'm going to remove that, and I'm just going to put in at Alex Villedas. And then I will click select, and then you'll see I'll have this piano. I'm not clicking anything right now. It's just hovering around. I'm going to go over here, and then I'm going to click to put it down. Then if I clicked again, it would put like as many pianos there, and I don't want that. So I go over to the build tool, I click on it, and now it's gone. Now, if everything goes well, I move over here. See, Alex Villedas now pops up. And if I press X, so you saw the default came up with, which was that hard-coded information. And then after the async call came back, it loaded up Alex's. So that's why you saw that little flash. But here we go. Now we can scroll through there, look at his stuff, close it, go over, take a look at Matryoshkas or DOZs, a bunch of friends over here. I hope that was fun. I hope that was helpful, and I will see you next time.